Hello, everyone, and welcome to this beautiful interview that I am bringing to you today. And today we're going to talk about some happy pills. And I have this beautiful lady with me. Her name is Jackie Minchillo. Thank you, Jackie, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for thinking of this idea and inviting me.
Yeah, well, this is the perfect time to talk about what we are going to talk about. And I like to start it off with a quote of something that my teacher says. And he says, through every chaos, there's an order trying to emerge. And
Mm,
Jackie wrote a book that helps us to find order in the midst of chaos and overwhelm. Before I start talking with this wise woman, I would like to tell you a little bit about her. Jackie is a former corporate ladder climber with a background working for digital marketing and publicity agencies. In 2015, she and her husband decided to quit their corporate jobs in Chicago, sell everything they owed, and move to Costa Rica, where I met her.
yes, it
Jackie's
was meant to be.
right. Jackie spent 3 years covering Costa Rica for International Living magazine and spent a lot of her time in Costa Rica on a journey of spiritual discovery and self healing. Today, she and her husband live in St. Petersburg, Florida, and are the co owners of a web development agency and a residential and commercial cleaning company, amongst other business ventures. Writing has always been a passion of Jackie's and part of everything she's ever done in some way, and has now led to a lifelong goal of publishing her first book. And her first book is called Happy Pills 25 Tools to Overcome Overwhelm in Your Everyday um, Life.
Life.
It's normalcy or chaos. All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. And let me ask you this. Why did you write this book and why now?
So it's been an interesting journey for me. Something that I mean, in my bio there, I mentioned it, but writing a book has been something that has been in the back, in the middle of my mind, moving itself closer and closer to the front of my mind for a long time. And I actually started writing the book technically in 2017. My mom passed away in 2017, and after a couple of months, sort of working through the trajectory of that raw sort of stage in a grief journey, um, I just started this Word document on my desktop to keep track of things that I was doing to try and feel better, to try and lift my spirits, to kind of just get through every day and keep pushing forward. And it turned into like this glossary for myself of like, I tried this a few times. That's not really helping me. I'm going to delete that out of there. I'm going to add this new thing that someone suggested to me and try it a few times, and kind of just keeping notes, keeping track of what was really helping me with what I was going through. And this document sat on the desktop of my computer for the next 2.5 years. And I'm looking at it every day, starting to have these thoughts of like, maybe this is the book. Maybe this is my first book. Should I turn this into a book? And sort of riding my own mental roller coaster of, no, that's not a good idea. Yes, that's a great idea. I'm going to do it.
A resistance in our brains that said maybe not now, but
Yeah.
spirit, it's like yes, right now is the time.
Yes. So I will say it's something that I tried to talk myself out of many times. I had all of the reasons why it wasn't a good idea, why people wouldn't like it, why that's not a good enough idea. These stories we tell ourselves. And then 2020 came, and it's so funny because I feel like this is for all of us in our lifetime. This is really the first time that we've experienced something on a global scale that is affecting everyone in some way. And so it's like, it's been so yucky in so many ways, but it's also like this beautiful moment of this one thing that has managed to connect us all in this parallel experience. Um, so my husband and I own two businesses that we have employees in, and really the book started coming to fruition towards the beginning of, or towards the end of March, I would say, after a few weeks of shutdowns here in the States. One of our businesses is digital. The other is a cleaning company. So in person, we had a period of time there where it was really scary. We didn't know what would happen, if we were going to be able to continue operating. And that experience was something for me that was sort of felt next level, in the sense that I was in this position where this is not just affecting me, but I am worried about being able to give other people their paycheck.
Right.
And there's other people that are depending on me for their livelihoods, and also have all these questions and this uncertainty. And I feel in some way responsible for not only my experience, but their experience as well.
Yeah.
So
Especially having a big heart like you do.
yes, I really do. I mean, I am the person that will hear someone's story, and it's someone that I don't know. And perhaps the story is not even necessarily that heartbreaking, but I'm in tears. I'm like, oh, but,
That and let me pause for a moment, because a lot of the people that are watching this, and I've talked to a lot of you, you tell me I am so sensitive. I am hypersensitive. I'm always feeling so much for everyone. So this year, if
yeah,
you're a sensitive person, which I think it's a beautiful thing, a superpower, I like to call it, because you're very intuitive and all of that. This year, it's been a year to feel it all. And
hmm,
that can be overwhelming in and of itself, and it could be chaotic. So I just want to
yes.
say that, because you
Oh,
went through it.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, so yeah, March and April were really, really stressful months, and it sort of sent me back into this, is not necessarily back into, but sent me into a really dark, heavy mental space. And it's so interesting because the first couple weeks, when you start seeing the headlines and start to kind of grasp what's happening, I I feel like I was like, okay, I'm going to approach this with my normal positive mindset. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to work itself out. And I felt like I just got swept away. I allowed the chaos to sweep me away.
Mhm.
And after a few weeks of that, feeling like I don't know how to get out of this mental cycle that I'm in. I keep just feeling like I'm spiraling downward. And at one point I was having a conversation with my husband. I was like, I literally feel crazy. And
Mm.
I'm not talking about crazy like Halloween crazy. I'm talking about like I cannot control what is happening in my head right now, and it is scaring the shit out of me.
Mhm.
And so I work trying to work through it with my therapist. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I talk about that in the book.
Yes. Yes.
um,
Asking for
and
help is so important.
yeah. Oh yeah. It's like this story that we tell ourselves sometimes that we should be able to control or get a hold of our own thoughts can feel so lonely and so isolating. um and I think when we're in a setting where open sharing is promoted and you start to have some raw authentic conversations with other people, you always come to find that you're not the only one in whatever you're going through.
Yes.
I think that's so powerful.
Mhm.
um
So you
so
talked to your therapist when you were spiraling down.
yeah.
Mm.
Oh yeah. Amongst trying to make it to yoga as much as I could, and trying to keep up with my daily meditations and all the things that I know make me feel better, but are also some of these self-care type habits or routines in our lives can be some of the hardest things to stay consistent with when we're really not feeling that great.
Yes.
um and so I did have a moment where I felt like, okay, the energy is starting to shift. I feel like I'm starting to feel better again, and starting to feel hopeful, and like, yeah, we're going to figure this out. Obviously, we were able to get people back to work, and that helped. And it's just part of the cycle of life, right? I mean, I always try and reassure myself and remind myself that nothing is permanent, and that is sometimes sad to think about when we're thinking about it in the context of, a relationship ending, or losing someone we love, or uh, life transitions from a period of life that was really, really great. But it also is very comforting
Mm-hmm.
when these sort of chaotic things and chaotic periods come up, that it's just like, okay, this is not going to last forever. So that is what pushed me to really jump back in, open that Word document, finish it, edit it, put it into more of a form in terms of having some introductory material and sort of inserting a bit of my personality and the perspective that I was coming from when I wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I had one day in particular where I had this overwhelming feeling of just like, I am a fortunate person in the sense that I have a lot of resources at my disposal.
Mm-hmm.
I have a therapist. Uh, I'm not worried about money right now. I have a support network around me. All of these things that
Mm-hmm.
help make these periods of time easier.
Mm-hmm.
And so the feeling was just like, if I am feeling this low and feel like I'm spiraling so far out of control, there have to be so many people that are feeling hopeless right now, is really the word and the feeling that was coming up for me, of just like, where do I fit in this landscape, and how am I going to get through it, and what is life? There's so much uncertainty even now. And I felt that energy from people around me too, of everyone just getting losing their center in a way, and losing that sense of 2 feet on the ground, because it's a giant question mark
Yeah.
on such a massive scale.
Yes, yes. So I want to ask you something because I work with people and I talk to so many that say, okay, that's great, the self-care practices, I know them. And before I said all that I'm about to say, I want to acknowledge you for creating that document. That just shows me how much of a diligent student of life you are. So I just wanted to say that
Thank
that is
you.
amazing. That is amazing. I just want to have my toolbox and And I think that in and of itself is a beautiful practice. What are my tools? What works for me? And I'm going to put it
Yeah.
somewhere where I need it. But luckily now people have your book and they can refer
Yes.
to your book. But then people tell me, Paula, okay, I get it. You know, we do this session, I feel amazing. And then you give me homework. But then during the week, I go spiraling down again. And then the most important part is to do the homework. But
Mm.
sometimes I don't feel like I can get out of bed.
Yeah.
And I read your book, and you know there were times in your life besides this time with COVID, like when your mom got sick and when you had to move out of Costa Rica, and all of those stories that you tell there, like there were intense moments. How did you um how did you get yourself to do the work in the midst of chaos?
Ooh, I mean, it's been a long process and a long journey over time, I feel like. Um, I do feel like probably one of the greatest turning points in my life, which I talk about at the very beginning of the book, was the experience of losing my grandfather in my early 20s. Um, and it was really just my my first sort of up close and personal experience with death, if
Mm,
you will.
yeah.
And also someone that I mean, he was my best friend. I was living with him at the time, and so in combination of the shock of being there for that moment when he passed away and the role that he played in my life, that was like a felt like a curse at the time,
Mhm.
for sure, and felt like, why is this happening? Why did this happen this way? Why me? Why did I have to be the one that was there?
Mhm.
um all of those things.
Mhm.
But it was also sort of this slap in the face type of moment, that I think was really pivotal for me, in the sense of really coming to that understanding that, like, going back to that understanding of nothing is permanent, and no day is promised, and all of these things that kind of sound I have this theory that some of these really profound sort of life lessons and things that are really true over and over again have become a little bit of a novelty or something with social media and with like memes and inspirational quotes. It feels like it has sort of diluted some of these things in a
Mhm.
way of like, now you say live each day like it's your last.
Mhm.
And that statement comes from a very profound place, right? Of like, truly, none of us know what is going to happen tomorrow,
Mhm.
and the importance of living in the present moment. But it's become so
Cliche
like almost
overused.
geeky
Mhm.
in a way, with greeting cards and social media and all this stuff, that people are like, they like want better advice than that.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, even I understand that sometimes it can be very frustrating when it feels like someone is trying to say something to you that's meant to be encouraging, but it feels overly simple. But at
Mhm.
the same time, and I talk about this in a few places in the book as well, is that has rung true for me over and over again, that the simple things are often the things that make the most monumental difference. And I think it's more about consistency with the simple things than it is trying to implement or understand something that is super philosophical or complicated or complex.
I
Uh,
love, yeah, I loved what you said that the simple things are oftentimes is the one that will give you monumental change. And And life is simple. Source is simple. We make it complicated, but I love what you're saying is you just show up, do the simple thing, and then you'll see the result. It might not be immediate, but you'll
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I mean, and then over time, over the past 10 years or so, and especially during my time in Costa Rica, I think part of it was just um yeah, being in the right place at the right time a little bit, and also just finding that moment in time where my interest was sparked to explore a little bit of more of my spirituality, and what is it that really speaks to my heart and makes me feel fulfilled and full of love. And I think that that is for there's my book, there's a million other books out there by smart people who have had incredible life experiences, and we all have different advice. And I think that that's an important piece to keep in mind too, is we of course all can always benefit from pulling off of other people's advice, but we need to be looking at it through the lens of what pieces of this advice work for me in my life where I am right now. And also, like, well, maybe parts of that piece of advice sound good, but I might tweak it a little bit because this would feel more
Yeah.
authentic to me. And so I think that just allowing yourself the space to be creative with the things that you're trying to implement in your life, so that you can really find something or find some things that feel really good to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing I like to do with my clients is I ask them, what would you like to experiment with? So we'll talk about all these things, but at the end of the day, you choose what works for you and what feels that you something that you can commit to. You need to
Mm-hmm.
want it. You need to really want it to do it. So let's jump into the conversation about what can people expect in the book. There's 25 tools. They're amazing. There I put here in my notes my favorite ones. But before I share my favorite ones, I would love for you to tell us what can people expect when they read your book.
Yeah. So the approach that I took was very similar to what the purpose of the Word document was for me. So I would love for people to be able to have this and think of it as a quick reference guide
Mhm.
that they can pick up when they need a reminder of something to try to shift their energy or to lift their spirits. It's a quick read. I have gotten a lot of wonderful feedback so far, but a lot of people are telling me that their initial read through was like they finished it in a day. So it doesn't take a long time to read. The chapters, I say the word chapter lightly because the way the book is structured is that each tip is broken into a chapter, but the chapters themselves are each only a couple pages long. So it really is meant to give you these sort of bite-sized ideas of, are you feeling heavy? Are you feeling low? Are you having that feeling of like, I don't even want to get out of bed today?
Mhm.
Like, what can I do to shift my mindset even a little bit so that I can get out of bed, and then figure out the next step after that?
Mm.
Um, it's interesting because as I was going through final rounds of edits, I have some ideas here that I think are unique and probably will be new to people. But I also talk about a lot of things that are not groundbreaking. These are, in some shape or form, you've probably heard these pieces of advice before. But what I have found, and what I think a lot of people can probably relate to, is that when I am feeling super overwhelmed or full of anxiety, even the simplest things like making sure I'm drinking enough water, for example, it's like it feels like a chore. It feels like a task. I don't want to do anything. And then neglecting those things compounds into creating this. Now you're physically not feeling that great because you're dehydrated and you maybe have a headache or you're feeling sluggish. And so that feeds back in a cycle of like, well, I was in a bad mood. Now I don't feel good. So I'm in even worse mood.
Yeah.
So I really would love for it to serve as that reminder for people when you're in that state of like, I literally don't know what to do to get out of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's 8 a.m. I have the whole day ahead of me and I'm feeling like the day is a wash because I feel this way.
Right.
And I mean, that's something particularly for me in the last few years, I feel like I've really tried to hone in and work on for myself is like, if something happens that is not ideal, how can I make sure that I don't allow it to hijack my entire day?
Beautiful. Oh, I love this. As you're speaking about this, I like the concept of parenting yourself.
Yeah.
We all are wanting for someone to come rescue us, to give us the answer. Um, but we might wait for a long time. I mean, we have our friends and family that loves us and they want to help us. But at the end of the day, you're the one that is going to rescue yourself. Now,
Yeah.
when you're feeling really badly, you say, well, I feel really badly, all of these emotions, all of these thoughts. And I like to refer that to the little self, to the self with a little s. And we want to
Mm-hmm.
bring that self with a capital S, that you might call it your highest self, your source self. And I just picture this idea of asking your highest self, can you tell me what can I do right now? And because when we're triggered, we don't have that much access to creativity, ideas, or we go into tunnel vision. We can't hear much. We're just in it. So
Mm-hmm.
just picture people grabbing your book, just saying, just tell me what to do, and opening it a page and allowing something to come through. Um, Not sure why it came through, but that's just one of the ideas on how to use this book. And
Yeah.
think about it, you just go there, pick one, just do it, and parent yourself that way so that you can reclaim your inner authority, come back to the center, because it's right in the center when we can see the truth. When we're out there and chaos,
Yeah.
it's so painful and it's very human. But I love that you're bringing all of these tools. So let's talk about a few tools. Um,
Okay.
and I love to begin with the tool of write yourself a letter on a good day. And I'm a big proponent of doing the work, the heavy lifting when you're having a good day or when you're having just an okay day. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
right there where we have access to what I just said, creativity, ideas, resilience. So as you said, what can I do when I'm having a bad day so that it doesn't spiral down, doesn't ruin everything else? So it's kind of like the same concept. When I'm having a good day, how can I help my future self having a problem? So can you talk
Yeah.
to us about write yourself a letter on a good day? Because that was my number one favorite.
Yeah. So that was a suggestion from a therapist, of
Mhm.
course, not of course, but it just feeds into some of my other tips too. But the conversation that we were having is this idea that when we're going through something, grief, job transition, whatever it may be, and we're having these like multiple days in a row where things are just not going our way, we're stressed out, we're worried about the future, etc. It very quickly sort of brings us into this mental cycle of like, this is what my life is. Things are not going the way that I want them to. Things are feel just really crappy. And the way she said it was so beautiful, is like, there are good days. If if you think back to a time when, for example, when your mom passed away, even in the first couple months, even though the overarching feeling is sadness and loss and grief, even in there were good days in there where you felt good, you were able to laugh, you were eating, you were able to sleep, all of these things. And those good days exist, but we forget about them if it feels like they're being outnumbered by the bad days.
Right.
She's like, next time you have a good day, you try and be really cognizant of this in the moment and write yourself a letter about that day, about why it was a good day, why you were feeling good. And you can even incorporate this, can be totally free form, again going back to everyone's unique self and unique experience and what feels natural to them, because you don't necessarily want it to feel like homework. You want this to feel like a free flowing exercise of like, I'm having a great day, I'm going to write about it. And so she said, write this letter, and then when you're having a really bad day, go back and read the letter. And so I did that, and the first time I did it, it was amazing to me, because it's like, some of these things, when you first hear it, when it first lands with you, you tend to have a feeling of like, well, that kind of silly. I don't know. The first time I did it, I was amazed by how much better it made me feel when I did go back and read the letter for the first time. And so I have implemented that and done this periodically. And how I like to describe it is like, again, when you're feeling really overwhelmed, whatever the other emotions are that are coming with that, you forget a lot of these things. You maybe lack the motivation to do anything really profound to try and lift yourself up. But if you have this letter that you wrote yourself, you kind of now have a personal glossary of like, what did that day look like when I was feeling good and feeling light and feeling full of energy and full of hope, or whatever it is that you're trying to get back to or call in more of. Remind yourself, what are the things that made up that day, and then try and pull in bits and pieces of it. Like, oh, well, it says that I had a great breakfast that day, so maybe that's what I can do first, is just go and eat some really good food. Right. Or like, I talked to my friend Paola that day, so maybe this is a good day to give her a call.
Right. Right. I love this. Oh my God, I love it. I haven't done it, but I want to do it, and I've been telling clients to do it, and they're like, "Oh my God, that sounds so great!" It's funny that you said that some people might think it's funny, but most of the people that I coach, they're so into this, like you and I,
good.
that
Yeah.
so excited. Oh my God, that's a great thing. Let's do it.
Yeah. You'll have to tell me how it goes the first time that you do it.
I will.
But yeah, I felt that way when I heard it. Like, oh, okay, I can do that.
Mm-hmm. So good. The other one is the journaling part. I've never been much of someone that journals a lot unless I'm feeling deeply or I have something that I want to put down. I like to take notes and bullet points and to-do lists. That's kind of my style. But the way that you explain how you do your journaling with questions, I mean, maybe everyone knows this, but I was like, oh, I never saw that. Ask my question the same. This I'm ask myself the same question every day. I thought or the same questions every day. I thought that was amazing, and I did it for like about a week, and it was so beautiful because it kept reminding me. Okay, be grateful. The other thing that you wrote here, one thing I could improve, one thing I want to accomplish. So there are different items, and I just love all of the questions. So can you tell us a little bit more about that one?
Yeah. So there's two things to sort of lead into this. One is that, so for me personally, I've always been a writer, and I love the activity of writing. So journaling for me is like, I mean, I think I've written in journals since I could write, to be honest. It was
Mhm.
like I always had notebooks, always writing things down, writing stories, whatever. But in our modern society, journaling is another thing that I think, I feel like people have maybe some misconceptions around, or even some resistance to. And for me, and what I observe, it seems to stem from this, like, oh, well, journaling has become trendy now. So now you can like buy a journal everywhere you go, and everyone's talking about journaling. And I thought that was an important piece to include, because what I find, and even in conversations that I've had with some friends, it's like, yeah, like everyone tells me to journal, but what am I going to write about? Kind of these kinds of questions of like, if you're if you don't love writing, if you're not passionate about it, that could easily feel like homework, or like, well, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do that. But I do think that regardless of whether you identify as a writer, or you consider that something that you really like to do, there is something to be said for the the process of getting thoughts that are in our head out on paper, and actually physically writing it by hand. There's even different than typing, and there, I think that there's probably been tons of studies done on this, that your brain processes information differently when you are typing or talking versus physically writing by hand. So that can be, I think, very cathartic for people, and a very sort of therapeutic process. And I think the journaling prompts really help in those instances of feeling like, well, I have this journal now, and I have my pen, and I don't know what to write on the page. And sometimes it's great to just free write and just write, whatever is on your mind. But sometimes it helps to have a little bit of structure. So I do love that. Some of those daily questions, those like daily journal prompts, were actually a suggestion from our friend Nicole.
Mhm.
So she kind of turned me on to this. Like she's very good also at like consistent exercises. And then over time, I kind of added to the list myself of like, oh, this would be another good thing that I would like to keep track of and see how it changes over time, or how my mood shifts if I'm placing more focus on this. So that's a really perfect example of some of them I think could be good for everyone. So like you mentioned, starting off with something that you're feeling grateful for that day, um, writing like one thing that worked really well that day and one thing that could have gone better, using it as a place to remind yourself of the goals that you're working towards.
I love it.
Um, but then there is space there for that to become whatever you need it to be, whatever point you're at in your life. I mean, maybe you're a parent and you want to incorporate a couple of sentences on like how your dynamic was with your kid
Mhm.
that day. Um, so I think that could really expand pretty easily for people depending on what they're trying to focus on and what their personal circumstances.
Right.
Um, and then a few of the other prompts that I included in there, I tend to do a lot of journaling around fear because I am very cognizant of the fact that my fears really hold me back in a lot of instances, and that is the root of a lot of the it's sort of damaging stories that I tell myself, and things that I've made up in my mind to be afraid of. Um, so I actually, I love Elizabeth Gilbert, and she wrote a book called, oh boy, is it called Big Magic? I
Uh-huh.
think it's called Big Magic. And the book is about creative living, although I love that book and I think everyone could benefit from reading it. But she actually sort of got my juices flowing about journaling around fear in that book, because she talks about working with your fear.
Yeah.
And I think, I can't even remember, I think one of the exercises she talks about is kind of in the same vein of writing yourself a letter on a good day, except she's talking about it in the context of writing a letter to your fear.
Mm.
Um, so that's another, like, ooh, that can be juicy too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just sort of over time, like, what questions do I need to be asking myself about my fear so that I can dial it back and decide if that's even rational or not,
Mhm.
decide if it's true or if it's something that I created just based on bias or previous experience or what I see going on with other people. Um, I think that's a tendency that is really easy for us as humans to fall into. Like, well, I saw this other woman publish a book and she got a lot of hate for it. And a lot of people didn't like it for X, Y, and Z reasons. And so, like, do I want to publish a book because is that going to happen to me? And
Yeah.
then we end up talking ourselves out of doing things that we're feeling called to do.
Right. Because
And it's like one concept that has been really comforting to me very recently is this idea that, like, your magic, whatever it is meant to be put out into the world. And if you just do your part and let it out, it will land with whoever it's meant to land with.
mm,
And, like, yeah, you might get pushback and hate and criticism from people who don't like it or don't approve of it for whatever reason. But that is just, instead of allowing that to be something that we're scared of, I'm loving being able to take a step back and look at that as, like, that's just information. Like, that just wasn't meant for them. It was meant for someone else.
right. Right. Yeah. I love that. And I love the idea of being in inquiry to do those self reflection questions. And when people ask me, like, Paula, what does it mean to be to wake up, to
Mm,
be a self-aware person? And what you're describing is one of the exercises that we want to do, to be the observer of the program that it's over here. And again, we have that capacity. We're the self with a capital S, that we can observe what's going on here. Interesting. I'm comparing myself to that woman. Then if she had a bad experience and now I'm making it, that's going to happen to me. So having that curiosity to understand our patterns, I think it's such a privilege and such a beautiful and sometimes really challenging thing to do. But if you're watching this, I know that you're getting inspired by all this conversation, and maybe you will do the same. So, what is my last question is to you, Jackie? What is your go to practice that you wrote in the book this day? Something that is resonating right at this time, and as we know, you're in the United States and a lot of things are going on with the election and chaos and
hmm
all of that. So, what is your go to technique what tool that you're, what is the pill that you're taking this day? The pill.
Yeah, I think a few of them, but the most profound ones for me right now are daily meditation, just trying to get deeper into my practice and being really, really cognizant of like, no matter what is happening in the outside world, no matter what's going to happen in my day, if I take that 10 or 20 minutes to just be with my breath, be with my body, I know that I'm going to have that period of time of peace. And I think that it's just, even, and I think people place a lot of judgment on themselves when it comes to meditation, because they'll try and sit and they'll try and do a meditation, and then they feel afterwards like, well, my thoughts were racing the whole time, and like, I don't think I really did it right, quote unquote. But even if your thoughts are racing the whole time, you still gave yourself that time to
Right.
be dedicated to you and to notice that your thoughts are racing. So it's like, that could be the point of it, and just to realize like, okay, I have a lot going on, and let me try and just reset for a minute or 10 or 20. So I've been trying to be super, super, super diligent about making sure that I get that practice in every day.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is the nutrition
Mm.
suggestions. So, and for a couple of reasons. I mean, obviously, we have this global issue of the virus, and people are feeling concerned about their health and their safety in that sense. And I am just the biggest advocate of, you have to take care of your body from the inside out. And this is what's going to protect you. I mean, protect your body's natural function, protect the machine, protect your immune system by feeding it healthy things. And then to go back to kind of what we touched on a bit in the beginning, is this sense that like, neglecting things like drinking enough water and eating healthy food are, on the surface, they sound very simple, but it is work. It's work to dedicate yourself to doing that for yourself. And those are the things that are very easy to get lost and forget about when things feel really chaotic. It's a lot easier to run and grab carry out than it is to carve out the time to make lunch for yourself. But I just notice through observation that when I don't eat well and I don't feel good physically, it compounds whatever is happening in my mind.
Yeah.
And it's also sort of counterintuitive from our culture in a lot of ways, because we have these buzzwords like comfort food, for example, and I think or treat yourself, which I love treating yourself. But at the same time, I think we're all aware that when it comes to food, when we're talking about food, the comfort food and the treats are the things that usually aren't that good for us. And so it's like, okay, well, in the uncertainty of everything that's happening and not knowing how long it's going to go on for, like, if you're treating yourself every day, you're not going to feel very good.
Yes.
And that's going to create a layer of mental fog as well, on top of whatever else you've got working through here that you're trying to tame and redirect.
Right.
So yeah,
Almost like help yourself to win.
yes.
Beautiful. And so the people that acquire your book right now for until November, I can't remember the date,
14th. Yeah.
14,
Yes.
you're going to be donating 50% to an organization in the United States that's called NAMI. Is that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And I chose them because I think that this is a topic that is getting overshadowed right now in everything that is going on. And I think that there is a lot of people struggling. We're starting to hear a little bit more about it, but I just have had this feeling of like, we're really not going to know the impact of this current situation until it's too late, in a sense. And I think that there are a lot of people that are struggling in different ways. um, and it's we can't do it alone. We're social beings, and when you're trapped in a cycle in your own mind, um, you really need to be able to ask someone for help. And if there are people that don't have a great support system, they don't have the resources to go and hire a therapist. And so what NAMI does is, at least here in the States, they have a little over 600 affiliate locations throughout the country, and they provide support services, amongst other things. They do a lot with education and advocacy, but they put on free support groups for people. They provide free therapy services for people who need it. And so I just felt like, given the outside world and everything that is happening right now, that I would love to support them in some way, to make sure that people who need some extra help can get it during this time. So yeah, through November 14th, I am donating 50% of the profits from the book to them. So, and the book is available on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. So they can get it in Kindle and paperback too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you live in the US and Canada.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. Excellent. So you go ahead and go to Amazon right now and buy this book. Buy it to your friends. Give it as a gift for Christmas.
Yes, it's a good stocking stuffer. It's small. It's not that. This is here. I have a copy right here. You can just slide that right in someone's stocking.
So good. So good. All right. Thank you so much, Jackie. It was such a pleasure to talk to you. There's so much in this conversation, and I know people are going to find a lot of benefit from hearing you. Thank you for being courageous. Thank you for doing this. We need you. And so keep showing up that way.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. I really love you.
Love you too. All right. Goodbye, everyone. And we'll see you next time.